dust and blood on the horizon. The sun hung low over the desert, bleeding fire across the sky. Heat shimmered on the horizon, warping the line where earth met heaven. A hawk circled high, its wings cutting shadows across the dry land. John Calder rode slowly, his hat pulled low, dust clinging to the sweat on his neck. His horse, a broad-shouldered buckskin named Copper, breathed steady but heavy, its flanks damp with the day's work. The trail had been long, and the silence of the plains pressed in like a weight. Calder was no stranger to silence. He had lived with it since the war ended, when the cannons fell quiet and the screams of men faded into his memory. Now silence was the language of the land. Only the wind spoke here, carrying whispers of coyotes and the rattling bones of old cattle skulls. He tugged on Copper's reins when the trail split near a dry creek bed. He knew this land, every arroyo, every bluff. Calder's ranch lay 3 days' ride east, beyond the Mesquite Flats and the Crooked River. He'd left it under the care of 2 hired hands while he drove cattle south. Now, returning, he felt the familiar pull of home, but something gnawed at him. The town of Dry Creek lay a mile ahead, and as Calder crested a ridge, he saw smoke curling from its center. Not the lazy smoke of cook fires. This was black, mean smoke rising from timbers. His jaw tightened. He nudged Copper forward. The town was half dead already. Dry Creek had never been more than a row of leaning storefronts, a church with a crooked steeple, and a saloon that did its best to keep the men from going mad with loneliness. But now, shutters hung broken, glass scattered on the ground, and the sheriff's office door swung wide. Calder dismounted at the saloon. The place reeked of spilled whiskey and fear. Inside, a chair was overturned. Blood stained the floorboards near the bar, dark and drying. A piano stood silent in the corner, one of its strings snapped, curling like a snake's tongue. "Hello," Calder's voice echoed. No answer. He crossed the room, boots thudding. A noise stopped him, soft, ragged breathing from behind the bar. He drew his Colt. "Come out." A boy rose slowly, no more than 12, pale and trembling. His clothes were torn and blood streaked the side of his face. "Don't shoot, mister," the boy gasped. Calder holstered his gun. "What happened here?" "They came, Outlaws, Blackthorn's gang. Tore through the town like wolves." Sheriff tried to stand, but... The boy's voice cracked. "They killed him. Strung him up out by the well." Calder's gut turned cold. "How long ago?" "An hour, maybe less. They took folks with said they needed bait." The word cut deep. "Where'd they go?" Calder asked. The boy lifted a shaking hand toward the north ridge, up into the rocks. "Got a camp there." Calder dropped a coin on the bar. "Get yourself water. Stay low until it's safe." He left without another word. The north ridge rose like the spine of a buried beast, jagged rocks cutting the sky. Calder rode Copper hard, following the trail of hoofprints and boot tracks. His mind sharpened. Blackthorn's gang, he'd heard of them. Rustlers, killers, men who burned farms and took women as trophies. Their leader, Eli Blackthorn, had once been a rancher himself before turning outlaw. Some said the land had broken him. Others said greed had. As the ridge loomed closer, Calder spotted them. Horses tied in a draw, smoke curling from a campfire. He dismounted, tied Copper to a scrub bush, and moved in quiet, his rifle slung low. Voices carried on the wind. Rough laughter, the scrape of knives on tin plates. Calder crept to the edge of a boulder and looked down. There were 6 men, their faces hard, guns at their sides, and tied to a post in the middle of camp was a young woman. Her dress was torn, dust clinging to her skin. She struggled weakly, rope biting into her wrists. Calder's chest tightened. One of the men leaned toward her, grinning. "Ain't no use fightin', darling, you're just bait." The words chilled Calder. "Bait? For what?" The woman lifted her head. Her eyes, fierce despite the pain, burned across the campfire. "I know," she whispered. And Calder didn't move yet. He counted rifles, gauged distance. 6 men. He could take 2 before the others turned. But the woman, if bullets flew, she'd be caught in the crossfire. One of the men, tall and wary, spat into the fire. "Reckon Calder'll come. He's the only fool with a ranch worth tackin' left in these parts. Blackthorn wants him alive." Calder froze. So this was the game? The woman wasn't just any prisoner, she was bait for him. The leader stepped forward then, Eli Blackthorn himself. His hair was black streaked with gray, his face cut by scars, his eyes cold as a snake's. He wore 2 pistols low on his hips and carried himself like a man who feared nothing. "Keep her alive," Blackthorn said. "The rancher'll come sniffin' soon enough. And when he does, we'll gut him slow." The men laughed. Calder's hand tightened on his rifle. But he waited. Patience was the difference between living and dying out here. The woman coughed, then whispered again, her voice carrying just enough for Calder to hear, as if fate had meant it. "I'm just bait." Something inside Calder snapped. He raised his rifle, aimed, and fired. The first outlaw dropped before the latter died. Chaos erupted. Gunfire cracked, bullets sparking off stone. Calder rolled behind the boulder, chambered another round, and fired again. The woman ducked low, ropes straining as the camp exploded in violence. Blackthorn's roar cut through the smoke. It's him, Calder, Boots thundered. Men scattered for cover. Calder moved like a shadow, his rifle spitting fire. He dropped 2 more before the rest pinned him down. Splinters rained as bullets tore into his cover. And then silence. Calder reloaded, listening. The campfire crackled, wind hissed over the ridge. A voice rose sharp and cruel. Blackthorn. Throw down your gun, Calder, or the girl dies. Calder peered from cover. Blackthorn stood behind the woman, his pistol pressed against her head. The other 2 outlaws flanked him, grinning. Calder's pulse thundered. He couldn't outshoot 3 guns with her caught in the middle. The woman's eyes met his across the firelight. For a moment, time froze. Then she whispered again, barely audible, but Calder read her lips. Cut the rope. What happened next blurred in violence and fire. Calder shifted, aimed, not at the men, but at the rope binding her. He fired, the bullet snapped it clean. The woman dove aside, hitting the dirt as Blackthorn cursed. Calder swung, fired again, dropping one of the flanking men. The woman scrambled, grabbed the dead man's knife and slashed at her remaining bonds. Bullets tore through the camp. Calder felt one graze his arm, heat and pain exploding through him. He dropped behind a log, blood slicking his sleeve. The woman rose, free now, her hair wild, eyes burning. She grabbed the fallen man's revolver and fired point blank into the second outlaw's chest. Blackthorn staggered back, shock flashing across his scarred face. But his eyes found Calder, and for the first time, John Calder saw not just cruelty in them, but recognition. You, Blackthorn snarled. Calder aimed his rifle steady despite the pain, and in that instant the woman whispered again, this time not to him, but to herself, a whisper of horror that reached him even through the smoke. Oh God, he's not after me. He's after you. Blackthorn smiled, a slow, cruel smile. You ain't run far enough, Calder. Not from me. The fire roared, the desert wind screamed, and everything in Calder's world narrowed to that single moment. The ghosts of Blood Canyon smoke clung to the air, curling through the rocks of the ridge. The gunfire had stilled, leaving only the crackle of the dying campfire and the groan of wounded men. Calder pressed a hand to his bleeding arm, teeth gritted. He had fought hard, but Blackthorn still stood, alive, smiling that cruel smile, his pistol steady as a rattlesnake's gaze. The woman crouched near the fire, revolver shaking in her hand, her wrists raw where the ropes had cut. Her eyes darted between Calder and Blackthorn, torn between terror and defiance. You got grit, girl, Blackthorn drawled, but you don't know what you're tangled in. He stepped forward, boots crunching on gravel, eyes fixed on Calder. This ain't about you. Never was. He's the one I came for. Calder leveled his rifle, though his arm screamed with pain, then let her walk. Blackthorn's laugh was low, bitter. You know me better than that? The woman's voice trembled as she spoke. Why him? What do you want from this rancher? Blackthorn's gaze didn't break from Calder. What do I want? I want what he stole. My life, my land, my blood. The words struck like a hammer. Calder's jaw tightened. Ali, he said slowly, your quarrel's with me. Always was. Leave her out. The outlaw leader's grin widened. I'll leave her out when you're dead. And with that he fired. The world erupted in gunfire again. Calder dropped, rolling behind a boulder as the bullet whined past. The woman screamed, then fired wildly, her shot sparking off stone. Blackthorn cursed and ducked back, signaling to his last man. The fight turned into a deadly dance among the rocks, gunshots echoing, boots scraping. Calder fought to steady his breath, blood slicking his fingers as he reloaded. His vision swam, but fury anchored him. Blackthorn had been a ghost in his past, a shadow he thought buried. Now that ghost was flesh and blood, standing across the fire with murder in his eyes. The woman moved fast, faster than Calder expected. She darted low, grabbed the outlaw's dropped rifle, and slid it across the dirt toward Calder. He caught it, chambered around, and popped up to fire. The last of Blackthorn's men fell with a cry, leaving only Blackthorn himself. The outlaw stepped back, retreating up the ridge, firing as he went. Not here, Calder, he shouted. Not like this. You want me? You'll find me where it all began. Then he was gone, swallowed by the rocks, leaving only silence. The woman dropped the revolver, chest heaving. Calder staggered to his feet, wincing. You all right? He asked. She nodded, though her face was pale. I should be asking you that. You're bleeding bad. Calder tore a strip from his shirt, binding the wound tight. Name's John Calder, rancher. You? Her eyes lingered on him, weighing trust against fear. Eliza Kane. They killed my brother when they raided Dry Creek. Took me as his bait, like you heard. Her voice broke on the word. Calder's chest tightened. He had seen death enough to know its weight. You're free now, Eliza. But Blackthorn won't stop. Her eyes burned. Then we stop him first. The trail led north, deeper into the canyons where the land twisted like a scar. Calder and Eliza rode copper double, moving through shadows that stretched long in the dying light. Calder's arm throbbed, but he forced himself on. He knew where Blackthorn would go. Blood Canyon. It was a place whispered about in the territory. a red-walled gorge where rivers once ran but now lay dry and dead. It had been Calder's home once long ago before the war, before Blackthorn turned. Two young men had carved a living from that canyon, raising cattle, building dreams. Brothers in all but blood, until greed poisoned it, until Calder walked away and Blackthorn chose the gun. Now the canyon called them both back. Night fell heavy by the time they reached the rim. The moon lit the walls in silver, shadows shifting like ghosts. Eliza shivered, clutching Calder's coat tighter around her shoulders. "This place," she whispered, "feels cursed." Calder nodded. "It is." A voices echoed from below. Blackthorn's men, more than Calder expected. Maybe a dozen, camped among the rocks, rifles glinting in the moonlight. Blackthorn's voice rose above them all, sharp as broken glass. "He's coming," he told them. "He always was, and when he does, he'll bleed here, same as the others." Eliza's hand brushed Calder's arm. "You can't face them all alone." "I don't aim to," Calder said, "but I've faced worse with less." He studied the canyon, every twist and shadow etched in his memory. He had worked this land blood on it. He knew its secrets, and tonight he would use them. The Battle of Blood Canyon was not swift. It began with whispers in the dark. Calder and Eliza slipping between rocks, cutting loose horses, scattering supplies. Blackthorn's men woke to chaos, shouting, stumbling in confusion. Then Calder struck, rifle flashing in the moonlight. Gunfire split the night. Echoes rolled like thunder through the gorge. Men fell, cursing, scrambling for cover. Eliza, shaking but steady, fired from behind a boulder, her face lit by each muzzle flash. She was no gunslinger, but desperation made her aim true. Blackthorn's roar cut through the den. Calder, the outlaw leader, strode into the open, pistols blazing, his coat whipping like a shadow. Calder met him shot for shot, bullets sparking off stone, each man driving the other back. The canyon filled with smoke, screams, the clash of steel on stone. By dawn, only two men stood. Calder and Blackthorn faced each other at the heart of the canyon. Bodies lay still in the dust, smoke rising from burnt wagons. Eliza watched from the rim, her eyes wide, knowing this was the end. The two men circled, guns low, boots crunching. "You should have stayed gone," Blackthorn snarled. "This land was ours. You walked away. I walked away from you." Calder shot back. "From what you became?" Blackthorn's eyes burned. "You took it all, left me with nothing but the gun." "You chose the gun," Calder said. The silence stretched. Then, as if the canyon itself held its breath, both men drew. The crack of pistols split the dawn. When the smoke cleared, Blackthorn staggered, a dark stain spreading across his chest. His pistol slipped from his hand, clattering against stone. He fell to his knees, eyes blazing even as life bled out of him. This land was mine. Then he was gone. Calder stood shaking, blood dripping from his arm, his breath ragged. Eliza rushed to him, catching his weight before he fell. "It's over," she whispered. Calder looked at the rising sun spilling fire across Blood Canyon. For the first time in years, he let the silence settle, not as an enemy, but as peace. "It's over," he echoed. And in that silence, the ghosts of the canyon finally rested.